If you're a sports fan, if you're looking for the truth, are sports rigged? There's been a lot of crazy talk here with the Chiefs and everything that's been going on in leagues, particularly the NFL. Regardless of what sport you follow, this is the complete episode on the truth on if sports are rigged. This is one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done, and I've got a great guest on today, the authority on this topic. I went right to the source because I've been talking about this a lot. You guys have been following the channel. I've been building this up, but I want to go to the source on this topic. And this is a very important episode. Make sure you guys are glued to the channel here, onto this channel. I put timestamps here below, but you want to watch this show in its absolute entirety here. We're talking, is the fix in? Are sports rigged? Everything on this topic. And I've got a special guest here, the author of The Fix Is In. And I'm going to do a full introduction here, Brian. Brian Tuohy, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
This is our third meeting here. I'm going to give you guys a quick update on who Brian Tuohy is. Serious here. We're rolling up our sleeves here. I'm going to tell you exactly who he is, okay? Brian Tuohy is an American author. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian. I want to do an introduction here. Brian Tuohy is an American author, recognized as a scholarly authority on the game of fixing in sports by the U.S. Supreme Court. You'll have to explain that to me later. He has written extensively on the subject with notable works including The Fixes In, the showbiz manipulations of the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and NASCAR, and its sequel, The Fix Is Still In, corruption and conspiracies the pro sports leagues don't want you to know about. In The Fix Is In, he examines the hidden aspects of professional sports, alleging the leagues manipulate outcomes to maintain viewer interest and maximize profits. He supports these claims with historical examples of behind-the-scenes dealings in various sports, including football, basketball, hockey, and car racing, and baseball. He's been a guest in over 200 radio shows across the United States and Canada discussing his perspectives on game fixing. Is that a good intro, Brian? Do we have it right?
Yeah, that sums it up. That does the job.
Just so you know who we're dealing with here on the show, right? So we're going to cover a lot. We're going to talk about the motivation behind the book, evidence of manipulation, the media's role. We're going to go on. So much to talk about here. My head's spinning. I mean, the past couple of days have been crazy on my social media, Brian. We talked a little bit before the show. I did a video talking about that one catch with the Chiefs and the Chiefs and the Bills game, and basically that's over 3 million views on my Instagram. People are loving this stuff. I've been building you up, man. I mean, where do we start? How crazy has it been lately? Have you been getting any phone calls? Have you been hearing any buzz lately from your end?
No, not really, because I don't do this as hardcore as I used to. I mean, I wrote the original book, The Fix Is In 2010 was published.
Right.
So, I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, which kind of blows my mind because I've been talking about the idea that the sports leagues manipulate their own games for basically television ratings for almost 2 decades now. I mean, that's a long time. I've been spreading this message, telling people, warning fans, like, look, what you think you're watching, what you're getting isn't exactly what it seems. And so after a while, you can only shout it from the rooftop so long before you go, you know what? If you don't have it by now, it's on you. It's not on me anymore.
It's an absolutely different landscape when you wrote the book. I think you wrote the first book, in 2010, if I'm wrong, The Fix Is In?
Yep, 2010 it came out.
By the way, you can get your the books below. I've linked them below. Both books are going to be linked below here for your reading pleasure. I recommend you highly dive in, but this show is going to cover a lot as well. So back then, I mean, it seems like, back then, it wasn't that long ago, but it kind of is.
It is, yeah.
It's like, were you kind of looked at as kind of a conspiracy theorist? Because right now, just to give you a general feel, because I've got my finger on the pulse here, the beat on the street, as they say. And when I'm doing these posts, I would say a good 90+% are agreeing that the fix is in. In fact, I wanted to give you some context here, because again, I've been all over this stuff. There's actually, they want to boycott. The fans have come together and they're looking at boycotting the Super Bowl due to unfair officiating. True. This is true. I think this is what we need. And they've built up, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the comments. I just saw this come up, but there's a change.org website. It's something built up where you can sign a petition on this. This is how crazy it's gotten. And when I first talked to you, we did a talk in 2021. We met again. I always believed in this. So you didn't have to, I was not on the fence. I was totally convinced on this. But now, again, we're talking boycotting. What are your thoughts on this? Has it's come to this point? Did you ever expect it to come to this point based on when you wrote the book to now?
No. I mean, it's interesting because when I first wrote the book, and I've had a website since, I don't want to say, I think 2006 is when I launched my website, which is thefixisin.net. And I've always had my email and stuff available for people to reach out to me. And ever since that date forward, I mean, that's going on almost 20 full years now. People would email me, in the early days, to be like, thank God somebody's writing about this. Thank God somebody shares this opinion, because I thought I was the only one. My friends would call me nuts because I would say, I think that game was rigged or this game was rigged. And people
Right.
really enjoyed having that sort of outlet. And today, and what I wrote about even in my books, is it's really hard for the fans to gain control of the sports leagues because it's not theirs. As much as fans want to say we when they talk about their favorite team, like we should do this or we should make this trade or we should hire this coach or didn't we do well this weekend or we won the Super Bowl or whatever, you're not part of the team. You're a fan. And there's a definite separation between fandom and being a part of the actual team. But the one thing I've always said is, look, if you want to change things in professional sports, the only way to get them to change is through money, because they're all about money. They don't play the games for free. They pay the games because it's a business and this is how they make their money. So the only way a fan can fight back is like a boycott. If you say, look, I'm not watching this, I'm not going to be involved with this until you fix this problem or that problem, the leagues are going to keep doing what they do. And I mean, I think we actually saw it happen. I think in the past, like when Barry Bonds, when he broke this home run record during this whole steroid era, I think there was a backlash. I think there was fans who really got upset that he broke kind of a sacred record and they all believed he was cheating. And I think it did lead to the Major League Baseball actually looking out for steroids. I mean, not fully. I mean, I think there's still performance enhancing drugs in the league. Don't get me wrong. But I think it was enough to make this Major League Baseball take a step back and go, whoa, maybe we should clean up this a little bit because we are getting some backlash and it's costing our bottom line. So I think a boycott type of thing is the best weapon the fans have to retaliate.
I don't know if there's enough people that'll get on board because people still buy the tickets. It's a Super Bowl. It's a highly touted event. And I just don't know if we're there yet. I think that you just got to piss them off a little bit more because there's a lot of pissed off people already.
But the problem, like you said, with sports fans is that they all have very short-term memories.
Right.
I mean, they can remember, the championship 25 years ago and they can remember the starting roster 10 years ago. But it seems like, 3 weeks ago, they already forgot what happened in those games. You know what I mean? It's a very short memory, it's a very selective memory. And yeah, they may have been, our team may have been screwed in that game, but they forget about it. They wash it out. And, that's the problem, is it's always about the next game. The last game is a problem for like 1 or 2 days, and then it's on to the next game, and they forget what happened before.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking short-term memory here. We're fantasy football. It's like one player has a good week, and then next week he's forgotten about. So I know all about short-term memory in sports fans. That's a big thing. So hopefully there's enough here now to people start waking up. And the problem is, there's only one team that's really getting screwed, because this game was prime time. It was standing out, right? Like it's championship weekend. And it's like, okay, the Bills got screwed. And the Bills fans can, piss and moan all they want, but it's like, does that really piss off a Cardinals fan, right? Then I'm still seeing a lot of people that are still like, no, it wasn't fixed. But let's talk about that game real quickly. I just want to highlight that because it's kind of hot right now. So there's a couple things that I noticed real quick. So there was the catch. Obviously, I want to talk about the catch that hit the floor, or hit the ground, I should say. And typically, those, once it hits the ground, and the thing is, the defender had more possession of that ball than I think than the actual receiver. So if it was going to go anyway, it should have been an interception. So that's huge right there. And that completely altered a lot of the game. Then it was the Josh Allen first down. Actually, prior to that, Josh Allen threw to Kincaid. Kincaid broke the plane, got the first down, went to fourth down. Josh Allen broke the plane, and they still didn't call it, right? There was that. And then there was a bunch of holding calls on a return that basically came back for, 40 plus yards. There was 4 or 5 holding calls. I watched tape that were not called on that return, which really shifted the momentum. That was crazy. And then there was illegal formations. At the beginning of the game, there's also a fumble. And that fumble, what happened was the Chiefs fumbled it. Buffalo recovered. And then the refs pointed, it's Buffalo's ball. That was convinced. And then all of a sudden they turned it saying that it was like an offside or something on Buffalo. But I didn't.
Legal formation or something, wasn't
something
it?
Like that. Yeah. But I didn't see it. Some people say they showed that clip. I didn't see the highlight. Maybe I was too busy recording. There was that. But then luckily Buffalo got the ball back. They fumbled again. They got their back and scored. And then the real cherry on top was at the end of the game, and he threw the ball. Allen threw the ball to Kincaid. Kincaid dropped the ball. It was 4th down. This would have converted a 1st down. And what ends up happening is he dropped the ball, but there was a flag thrown as an insurance policy. So, and the funny thing is, it says flag. Everyone's like, the announcer's like, flag, flag. And then it's on the screen, it had flag. It was illuminating. And then they're like, nope, no flag. They retracted the flag. So that flag was there. If he had caught the ball, got the 1st down, they would have called Buffalo and pushed him back. I'm telling you, man, like,
most likely, yeah.
There was like, it was so blatantly obvious. Like, it wasn't even like, oh, maybe there's a chance that this is not fixed. It was like blatantly obvious. Like, the Bills had zero chance to win this. And that's why I had to get you on the show and talk about this, because again, I've been doing a lot of videos. People are angry, dude. And again, if you can't see this, I don't know, man. You got to pull your head out of your ass. Like, I don't know what to say, man. Like, how do you not see? I just gave you like evidence. I gave you 5, and that's only 5 or 6 examples. The entire game was rigged like this. So well, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like,
I was saying the funny part is it would be one thing if half those calls were against the Chiefs and half of them were against the Bills.
Yeah.
And you could just say, okay, the game was horribly officiated. That's one thing. But when you have all these calls that always seem to favor one side, that's where it gets really shaky. That's where it gets really questionable.
Yeah.
And that's where I think fans should really wonder what's going on here, because, and this is always a point I tried to make early on in any interview or conversation about this fact, is there's no law that prevents a league like the NFL from basically fixing or manipulating its own game. There's no law that says they have to call certain penalties or don't call certain penalties. There's nothing that prevents these leagues from fixing the game if they want to, because it's entertainment. It's sports entertainment. And that opens it up to a whole wide world of possibilities that these leagues can do to manipulate games to get the outcomes they want, because at the end of the day, they're television shows. They're big, massive, multi-billion-dollar television shows, and that's what they care about.
But shouldn't there be at this point, like, this was something we went through back in the day with WWF. I remember people say like, oh no, it's fake. It's like, that was a whole thing in like the 80s and 90s, right? And now we're kind of having that same discussion. People are coming like, hey, this is fake. This is not real, but they're still playing it up. And that's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about the media's role. This is what I want to talk about. How complicit do you believe the sports media is in basically manipulating this and saying, hey man, perpetuate, you know what I'm saying? They keep buying into the narrative. How, because again, I was watching some mainstream channels, and one of them was like a local Buffalo channel, and it's like, nobody's talking about the fix. And I'm watching some of these top sports places like Bleacher Report, or even the NFL, and they're just continuing on with the narrative, almost like nothing happened. It's like business as usual. I'm like, hold on a second. Stop. I'm the only one. That's why I guess I'm getting 3 million views, because nobody else is talking about this. It's like, holy, like, do we just gonna ignore the fact? And there's all this talk about Mahomes is the greatest. I'm like, no, Mahomes is not the greatest. The team struggled the entire season. Like, why is, and this is why this is not proper journalism. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. That's why you did what you did. It's like, why aren't you talking about how manipulated this was? Why aren't you talking about week 12 to week 14 or 15 or whatever it was, where they barely scraped out wins against Carolina and Vegas and the Chargers? Those games were tight, and the refs made the decision. Why is nobody documenting this? They're just saying, oh, he's next Michael Jordan. No, he's not. It's completely rigged. It's completely fixed. So my question to you, do you know, based on your research and your books and stuff, is the media playing along? And how these mainstream consent, I call them consheepsis, how involved are they in the narrative? Do they turn a blind eye? And I think right now the script is flipping, where people like myself and yourself are just like, no, we're shining because these guys are lying. People don't want this anymore. They want authenticity. Yeah. How big is the media's role?
Well, I think it's huge. I mean, you got to remember, every major media outlet, I mean, pick it, ABC, NBC, Netflix, they all make money off professional sports. They all want to be in business with professional sports, whether it's the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, whatever, because it's the only thing that people still have to consume live.
Right.
It's the only television show that you can't DVR and watch later. You have to consume it live, which means you have to sit through the commercial. So it's big money for all of these networks, all of these outlets, and they're all involved in it. So, of course, their media pundits are going to toe the corporate line because they want to stay in business. They still want to have a job. And the journalism in sports no longer exists. especially investigative journalism. It's gone. It hasn't been in sports media for I don't even know how long, decades. I mean, it is just vanished. It's all just rah and talking heads, and the talking heads just give crazy opinions because it gets people stirred up.
Right.
So they'll tweet about it or put it on Facebook or comment in the video or whatever it is. But they do that on purpose. I mean, half of those guys don't believe a thing they're saying. They really don't. They just take a contrarian side to get people stirred up. But yeah, they are 100% complicit in this. And I mean, I think some of them are really naive and probably, believe what the NFL is feeding them and they take it for gospel. But I know there's some for sure. I know because I've talked to some that don't believe this, that they have seen enough suspects things to go, I don't know. I don't know about these leagues. I mean, you got to go back even to the NBA on NBC in the 80s when they had Michael Jordan. The NBA used to get together with NBC every week to dictate what was going to happen on NBC's show. The NBA was running NBC's show for professional basketball. They were saying what the pregame show would be. They went the halftime show would be, what the postgame show would be. They were running it. And so, I mean, there is no separation between media and sports anymore. They're interlocked. And so they just go lockstep together forward and ignore any sort of conspiracy because you and I, what finds funny is we're not the conspiracy theories. We're the skeptics.
Yeah.
We're the ones being skeptical of what they're feeding us. They're feeding us the conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
We're the ones stepping back. Wait a second. How is this true? How is this possible? When, we know better, when we can see with our own eyes, we can see what unfolds on the screen. You can't believe it for what it is. So, it's hard to be called a conspiracy theorist when you're the one being the skeptic.
Yeah, it's really bad, and how fake these people really are. They really, really are. And and the thing is, like, that's why some of the mainstream, I call it consensus, because Sheep says, are just trying to pretend I don't exist, right? But like, you can't deny, like I said, on my Instagram.
They pretend when I don't exist. I mean, so let me not to interrupt.
Talk about this, yeah.
But I mean, I wrote this book called Larceny Games, which is based on hundreds of FBI files that I obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, okay? I mean, I spent years doing this research, spent tons of money getting this stuff out of the FBI that nobody had ever gotten before. Nobody had ever picked up, researched anything. And long story short, I put this book together, published it, and my publisher and I had interest from HBO Sports, from ESPN, from Yahoo Sports, producers from 60 Minutes called my house. I had interviews with them. I had all these major media outlets interested in what I did and the research I did, and then not a single one did anything with any of it ever. They just ignored it, like it didn't take place. Like I didn't find this stuff out. That I didn't find out that Hall of Fame basketball players, football players were investigated by the FBI for fixing games back in the 60s and 70s. They just ignored it, like it never happened.
Wow.
So I mean, if they can do that and get away with it, which they did, then they can do a lot of things and get away with it. And the sad thing is, and in the greater scheme of things, I'm just talking about sports. Who cares? Just think about the other researchers who have done real research and, more important subject matters and how much they've been shut down and basically censored by omission from these major media outlets because they don't want to promote anything. Because even if they wrote negative reviews of what I wrote, they would still be giving me publicity. So they just ignored it like it never took place.
I just feel that the impact on the fans right now is just so large. I just think so many people, again, go to my Instagram, Fantasy Football Counselor. There's a video I just showed you before this where I'm basically standing in front of my TV in front of my house. And I wanted to swear, but my kids were there. I have young kids there, but my wife's like, you should be swearing. So I did say BS, but this video, I'm telling you, man, we're talking like how many million views? That's my other video. That one got 560K. This one's sitting at right now, like 3.1 million views, 54,000 shares. It's insane. It's insane. And then the majority of the people, 90% plus are saying, hey man, I'm fed up. Like this is BS. It's rigged. Let's boycott this stuff. And I think the impact on fans, like what do you think the impact on fans is based on your research? Are they going to eventually fight back, or like where are we right now?
I don't know if they're going to fight back. I think the ones who understand, who are fed up enough, will just stop watching. And I think that's enough. Because I mean, what was it? They won Super Bowl, the Rams won, where the Saints got screwed on the pass interference call.
I remember that, yeah.
Well, like the Super Bowl that year in New Orleans were like literally cut in half because fans just said, I'm not watching this. We know our team got screwed out of the Super Bowl. We're not tuning in to watch. I mean, it was actually a huge hit the NFL took, at least in that one city. And the more this spreads and the more this occurs, again, that's what it's going to take for the NFL and the leagues to change the way they do business. Is it's going to have to affect their bottom line. But when you have, big cities just funding sports leagues by giving them free land, free stadiums, tax breaks, and all these other things, I don't know how soon that's going to happen. But fans have to realize that, again, this is entertainment. This is not sports. Sports is, may take place in little league games or something like that. But,
Right.
in the college ranks and professional football, there's too much money involved to just leave it up to chance, especially when they don't have to, especially when they can control outcomes.
Okay, I know what's up, right? Like and most of the people listening, you guys probably know what's up, right? But I want, again, most of the stuff could be speculation, right? Like, okay, yeah, there's a bunch of calls we just talked about.
Here's the thing with the speculation, though, is, what you talked about was just one game, right?
Yeah.
Chiefs-Bills game. But extrapolate that out. I mean, how many different games, we just talked about, like the Rams-Saints game and this, pass interference call that didn't happen. Extrapolate that out. Think about, how the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, played the home game, the first home Super Bowl ever during COVID when everybody's locked up at home.
Yeah.
Think about when the Rams won the Super Bowl and were basically pushed line by the refs to beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And, think about the passes Peyton Manning threw that gave the Saints the Super Bowl after Hurricane Katrina. You start adding all this circumstantial evidence up, it's not circumstantial anymore. It's a pattern. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you don't recognize that this manipulation happens, you don't recognize that the NBA kept putting LeBron and Michael Jordan finals year after year after year. If you don't recognize the pattern and you don't admit that there is a pattern and it's benefiting the league and they're making money off the back of these patterns and they're causing these patterns to happen, you're not going to understand what it really is.
Yeah, but I'm going to be, devil's advocate. I'm going to play the other side here, and I get this all the time. Well, Joe, anything could be a good story. Anything could be. They could have made the Commanders and Bills a good story. Josh Allen fighting back, Jaden Daniels, rookie.
And they could have.
You could.
But there's also, you could have had who? You could have had the Rams who in the Super Bowl. And who would have cared? Would that have been a story? There are certain teams that you would have been hard to make a story on. And I think if you go back historically, even the past 5-10 years and look at the teams that didn't make it, that were in the playoffs or even in the championship games, there are better stories than other stories. Because you could have had the Bills Commanders and made a great story out of it because you had Jane Daniels, you had Josh Allen, you have the Bills potentially winning their first Super Bowl ever. The Redskins, not Redskins anymore, the Commanders and their new ownership and all that. But you also have a great story with the Chiefs and the chance for three-peat. You have, Hurts and you have Barkley for the Eagles. I mean, there are sometimes stories you can make either way. So, I mean, it's not always, it is, but sometimes there are better stories than other stories.
Well, I think there's no coincidences. I think, Peyton Manning won that Super Bowl before he retired, Ray Lewis on. I have my reasons, but I want to know, because is any specific examples of evidence? I want cold hard facts now. Let's dive into the book. Is there any, because people are like, this is a great conversation, I still don't believe you. Is there any evidence based on your research that kind of proves hey man, these things are rigged, it is manipulation? Can you give us some cold hard facts here?
Well, I think the first thing you should look at is the gambling aspect of it. And I think you have to look at the fact that we know, without a doubt, sports games all over the world and in the United States have been fixed because of gambling purposes. Because the one thing that I always hear about is, well, these athletes make too much money these days to fix games, right?
Right.
But you can look out, if you look outside the United States and you look at places like India and in China and around the world, cricket games are fixed everywhere. Soccer matches are fixed everywhere. Tennis matches are fixed everywhere. Rugby matches are fixed everywhere. It's a crime that occurs around the world, but supposedly does not happen in the United States, which is hard to believe, because name another crime that happens worldwide but doesn't take place in the United States. Right. There is no crime like that. It happens in the United States. Just nobody's looking for it. There's no investigation for it. Nobody wants to find it. Sports leagues don't want to find it. Gambling companies don't want to find it. The media doesn't want to find it. Even the FBI and local police don't want to find it. So nobody's looking for it. But here you have a crime that happens all over the world. And you also have something like, for example, the Indian Premier League, which is in India, their cricket league, which is their NFL. It's corrupt from top to bottom. It's been proven it's corrupt from top to bottom. Fans still come out and watch it. The league still goes on. It's totally corrupt. Serie A soccer in Italy, same thing. Corrupt from ownership on down to the players, down to the referees. Proven corrupt. Guys have been sent to jail for corruption in those leagues. You look at soccer matches, again, fixed around the world. They can fix a soccer match and say, tomorrow I want this game to end 3-4 3-1, the soccer players will make it. That's what the fixers demand. So you can have fixes in all these sports, and then to say it can't happen in the United States, well, it's not true. You just, again, nobody's looking for it, and we know, again, historically speaking, that it has happened. It just supposedly hasn't happened in decades, but again, tell me who's doing the research for it, who's looking out for it. I mean, in the NCAA, they actually give a survey to their athletes, student athletes, and then I forgot what it was last time. Percent of admitted to fixing games. 2% of NCAA athletes admit to fixing games. Where are the investigations? Where are the arrests? Which games? Big games, small games, Big Ten, SEC games. Nobody knows, but these kids admitted to doing it.
But do you have evidence, like actual evidence? Did you pull out any files, anything specific?
Well, again, stuff like I found from the FBI and is dated. I mean, it goes back to the 60s and 70s. But I mean, they had information. They would come from these top echelon informants within the mafia, within organized crime, and from bookies. They would say, this bookie is working with this player. They're going to fix this game. This team's going to win. And they'd have the information before the game, and that's exactly the way the game would end. But the problem for the FBI was that didn't prove to them, beyond a reasonable doubt that you could prove in a court of law, to cause an arrest. So they would then start getting wiretaps and all these other things. And by that time, the season may end or things would break apart, and then they couldn't get an arrest, and the player would move on and the bookie would move on. So, I mean, again, they had information. The guys like Will Chamberlain were fixing games. Bill Russell was fixing games. Len Dawson of the Chiefs was fixing games. What's his name? George Blanda from the Bears and the Raiders was fixing games. In fact, that's why they think the Bears got rid of George Blanda back in the 50s, just because he was fixing games. I mean, they had good information, very valid information, again, coming from their top informants that this was going on, and they would dig into it, but they never got it to the point where they could make an arrest and send somebody to jail for it. And that's why I think a lot of people don't believe it happens, because we have no history of it. But if you look, you can see there's evidence everywhere. It's just, again, for the FBI, what's more important? Is chasing after terrorists or, looking into this more important than a game that was fixed by some baseball player?
So,
it's not high on their list of things to do.
So who knows about this? Because I talked to some players that are just the kind of bubble players, the guys that just aren't the big names. They're not Kelsey, but maybe they were like a third stringer. And I talked to some other guys. They're like, yeah, we don't know anything. It could be happening. Who do you think is in on it? Do you think it's the coaches, the owners? Do you think it's the assistant coaches? Do you think it's the training staff? Do you think it's the cheerleaders? Who knows about this? And if it was so, if these people did know, are they sworn to secrecy? If you do this, we're gonna take you out, right? Wouldn't you think that one of these guys would have came out at this point and said, yeah, this is 100% fixed, and one of these players would have came out at this point? Or are they paid so well to shut up?
You just had Joe Mixon, right? A week or so ago. And basically said we knew the referees were going to screw us. We knew when we come to Kansas City to play, we not only have to beat the Chiefs, you have to beat the referees. And he's not the first player to say that. Right there, to me, that's an admission that they understand that the referees are going to favor that team.
Of course. And he got fined for that. He got fined $25,000 for that.
Right. And that's why they fine players, right? Because you can't speak out against the officials because you get fined for it. So they kind of impose censorship on all these players and all these coaches to not speak out against the refs. But all you have to do, I think, is go back to the Tim Donaghy scandal in the NBA. Because exactly what Donaghy said is the referees knew that when they got certain directives coming straight from the NBA that said, you have to look at this, we want to emphasize these fouls, de-emphasize these fouls, the refs instantly knew, well, we want the Lakers to win and not the Kings.
Right.
And so the referees would go out there and that's what they would do. Nothing was said explicitly. It wasn't written down on paper, make sure the Lakers beat the Kings, but the referees got their marching orders. They understand it. They went and did it. The same with game tanking in the NBA, right? If you're Mark Cuban, the billion-dollar owner of the Mavericks, twice, 2 different seasons, went on a podcast with Dr. J and went on the Dan Patrick Show and literally said, I told my players it is our best interest to lose. The owner told the players, don't win. Now, is that not a fixed game?
I would say so.
Hundreds of fixed games. Because, the Philadelphia 76ers had the process. Remember the process where they tanked games for 3 seasons?
Right.
They didn't discount tickets. They didn't discount parking, hot dogs, or anything else. They played NBA basketball, but they weren't going out to win. They had no intention to winning. They didn't want to win. Those are fixed games. It's happened right in front of you. It happened, but yet people just ignore it. Well, that's just tanking. Well, which games matter? Tell me which games matter. If those regular season games don't matter, do all the playoff games matter?
Right.
Super Bowl matter? What matters then? It's a really slippery slope to slide right down to the bottom of the barrel with this stuff.
Have any leagues come out to you and said, hey, man, like, have they responded to your claims, and what is their stance on it? Has anyone come to you and said, hey, man, like, back off or screw off, or gotten any emails from the leagues and says, your book's got to be taken off the shelves, or any threats, anything like that? No?
Not well. I mean, I know for a fact, though, that I've been, like I say, censored, for lack of a better term. I mean, what I've done, like I say, I've done 200 some odd shows. I haven't even lost count. But like ESPN Chicago, ESPN Boston, ESPN LA, none of the major, national ESPN shows will have me on. None of the, national Fox sports radio shows would ever had me on. I know, like, again, Sports Illustrated said they were going to run an excerpt from my book in their magazine. And then 2 weeks before it was scheduled to run, they shut it down, which was all based off of FBI files, which I could, show them. Here are the actual files. Here they are. Tell me where I'm wrong. And, so I know that, and I think some of that comes from the leagues. I know they know who I am, because I even had run-ins with the MLB security when I was doing an investigation into a potentially fixed baseball game. So Major League Baseball security knew who I was. So, I mean, I know they know who I am, and I know that they communicate with, again, these broadcasters and these networks, and I feel 100% sure that they've shut me down in certain ways.
Unbelievable. And that's where, guys like me are coming out. What was having you on the show, what's the biggest show you've been on? Like, actually been on and actually.
Dan Patrick show, probably.
He's been on there?
Sports.
Okay.
I was on there, yeah. Now, see, the funny thing with the Dan Patrick show is, though, they brought me on there because this was before sports gambling basically got legalized, when they repealed the PASPA law, when the state of New Jersey was suing about it. And so they brought me on actually to talk about legalized sports gambling, because I'd written an article in favor of legalized sports gambling for Sports on Earth. But about a minute into the conversation, I was able to turn the tables and start talking about game fiction, and Dan Patrick kind of bid on it. So I was able to kind of reel him in and get to talk about what I really wanted to talk about instead of the sports gambling thing. But that was probably the biggest sports show that I've been on, yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, I've noticed that, like, before you'd have your workhorse running back, right? You'd have like Adrian Peterson. He was the workhorse. Now that with these gambling websites, there's more prop betting, like this guy's over under on the rushing yard, stuff like that. What do you think? Do you think these gambling people, these gambling sites are absolutely in bed with these leagues 100%? Would that be your best guess?
I mean, I know a lot of people find this strange, but I don't think Las Vegas, for lack of a better term, is necessarily really in on all of this stuff. And a lot of people fight against me. They'll think, well, how can you say the games are fixed, but then Las Vegas isn't involved? Well, you got to remember, Las Vegas has multiple companies, right? I mean, it's not like one company owns all of the sports books in the country. There's not hundreds, but I mean, there's several major sports books, a lot of smaller sports books, and then more around the world as well. They're not all in business together,
No, of course.
So I don't think it benefits them necessarily to have certain outcomes. I mean, I know certain outcomes will benefit them in the short term, but in the long term, sports bettors lose. You can't lose money basically being a bookie. Over time, you're going to win money. Yeah, you may lose on this Super Bowl, you may lose on that game, whatever. But in the long run, you're not going to lose. I think what can happen, though, is like with these prop bets and that sort of thing, that's where you get what they call spot fixing. Right. And this they know happens in tennis and in soccer, especially, again, around the world, where you could have, say, whatever this, running backs over under on yards in this game were 85 yards. And you have somebody, or even the player himself, go, you know what? I'm going to bet on the under this week. And I rush for 45 yards. Then, I pulled my hamstring or twisted my ankle and tweaked myself out. And I'm out of the game. And I don't cover that line. Then we make a little money on the side.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily affect the outcome of a game. It doesn't even mean it's fixed in total the game, but that outcome is. And that's what they do in tennis all the time. They fix it for, we're going to lose the second game of the second match or second set of the match. That doesn't mean you have to lose the match. Just lose that one game and we'll make 10 grand. Okay, great. And that's what we'll do. So it's the same, I think, with sports betting is, you can fix certain outcomes, especially with these prop bets, really, really easily. And again, that's something no one's looking at.
So I think we're kind of convinced here, and I think a lot of people are, that, okay, something's up here. It is rigged. So how do you how does this play out? Do you think like Goodell sits there at the top, whoever the league commission, the owners are like, all right, sorry, Rams, you guys are going to take a loss this year. Chiefs are going to have to win. We're going to create the logo like this because the logo colors match, the Eagles and the Chiefs that matched up, right? The whole, we got to keep the Swifties in. So we got to keep this. So make sure you do this. And you bring in the head ref, I understand we can't let the other refs know. Like, I'm just trying to picture, are they in a boardroom here? How does this work? Like, because I know it's fixed. Like 100, I know my gut. Like you just know, right? And then I'm seeing the evidence. How does this play out? Like, do you know how this plays out, or how would you guess that this would play out?
And so remember, it's the owners' league, right? They own it. Goodell's a figurehead. He's like, they just trot him out there to go do their bidding, but it's their league. And you have to remember, like in the NFL, and nobody seems to know this number for certain, but at least 80%, if not more, of all revenue is shared. So every team makes basically the same amount of money because they share everything. The ticket sales, the TV rights, all that stuff. There's very few things that each team actually individually gets on their own. So like, when Travis Kelce's selling 1 million jerseys because all the Swifties are out there buying them, every team's profiting from that. It's not all going in Kansas City's pocket. It's going to every team equally. The only money of that would be if you buy it directly in the Kansas City Chiefs Pro Shop. Otherwise, if you buy it on NFL.com, it's split between everybody.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's 100%. The Cowboys have a little weirdness involved, which is why I think the Cowboys keep doing bad because Jerry Jones won't share his money. But for the most part, all the revenue from merchandise and all that is shared equally amongst all the teams. So it doesn't matter. So I think what happens is, if you go back, again, history, to the Major League Baseball in the 1980s, they literally, when free agency was just kind of growing, all the owners, and this is a proven conspiracy, all the owners got in a meeting with the commissioner and they agreed, we're not paying for anybody else's free agents. We're basically going to destroy the free agent market. We're not going to pay for anybody else's free agent. Do we all agree? They all sat in a room, literally agreed that we're not going to do this. And they did it for 3 seasons. Got busted because it was super obvious what they were doing. Got sued, lost the lawsuit, and it kind of changed the way Major League Baseball kind of progressed from there. But the fact is, the owners got together and agreed to do that. Every year, the owners have meetings. They have meetings to decide on compensation committee and all these sorts of things. They do agree on things. Now, I'm not saying they sit there beginning of the year and like say, hey, Team X or, the Chiefs, hey, you guys are going to win the Super Bowl this year and you're going to play the Eagles and we're going to make sure that happens. I don't think that's the way they do it. But I think they understand that sometimes certain owners come in, like I think like the ownership group that bought the Commanders.
Right.
You spend that much money, you're going to want certain guarantees. It's kind of like when the Golden Knights came into the NHL. You spend $500 million, you're going to want a little something for that money, right? And they got it. They got all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in that first season. And I think it's those sorts of things where they see certain storylines or certain ownership groups do certain things, like when the Rams built that multi-billion-dollar stadium in Los Angeles, that certain things go along with that. Certain success goes along with that, and the leagues can make that happen. But for the most part, though, I think what it is they just see storylines build, like Taylor Swift starts dating Travis Kelce. Whoa, that's something we need to capitalize on.
Yeah.
Let's give them a little help. And all you have to do, you mentioned how many plays in that game yesterday. It's probably, 6 plays that really kind of flip things, but not that many. That's all it took. A little help, push one team over another, continues a certain storyline, kills another one. But everybody makes money at the end of the day.
So it's I scratch your back, you scratch mine. A rising tide raises all ships type thing. So it's all like, let's make as much money as we can as a league together. We all sit together. Like this makes us as a business the most money. And that makes sense. It really does.
Well, and things too, people don't seem to understand is even though, like you had Tom Brady and his dynasty with the Patriots and a little bit with the Buccaneers. And now you have this Chiefs dynasty. Dynasties actually sell. People jump on those bandwagons, but people also hate watch. They watch.
Like me.
They want the Chiefs to lose, right?
I'm a hate watcher.
But they get you to the television, and that's what they care about.
Yeah.
They want you to watch. They want you to pay attention. So a big dynasty like that may seem bad on the surface, but actually it's great. It's good for business.
Yeah, there's a lot of hate right now with Mahomes right now and his wife and Swift. Even if you look at the NFL, right, they're posting a picture of like Kelsey kissing, what's her face, Taylor Swift, and you can see the don't care button, boycott button, and it's like people coming in droves, man. Like, man, we just don't want to see this anymore. We don't.
but they watch.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see it if you didn't watch.
Like a bad accident. You just
Right.
you're rubbernecking.
Turn away. Exactly.
So what happens to the future here? Like, where do you see this happen? Do you see any changes? I mean, I think they were talking about like, going over these calls in more detail and reviewing everything and implementing new technology. And like, I don't know, like with tennis, you have that Zoom cam where you can see if it's in within a fraction of an inch, right? But you don't have that technology. You have just a bunch of guys running with these chains and stuff like that and go, oh, what did you see, Frank? I don't know, John. What did you see? Let's just make a decision. Like, it seems a little bit like archaic, like it doesn't seem modern. So where do you see this going? Do they have to adapt, or are they just going to continue to piss people off?
I think they somewhat have to adapt. They don't have to fully adapt. I mean, I think obviously, they make what, $12 billion a season now in revenue or something like that. They have the money to implement any technology they can think of. They really do. They don't want to. It's the same with Major League Baseball. They have the box where they can call the ball strikes robotically, right?
Yeah.
I think that technology is pretty darn solid. They don't want to bring it in because then they lose the ability to control things. I mean, the ball and the strike, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you get, behind 0-2 or 2-0, that changes the at-bat completely. And if those are borderline pitches that the umpire calls one way or the other, that changes the at-bat, that changes the outcome potentially of that inning and the game moving forward. And I think it's the same with football. I mean, I always say, like, look, if you believe so much in replay and that replay can fix everything, why can't we hear the conversation between the ref and the NFL headquarters?
Right.
Wouldn't that be riveting? I mean, if they went to the replay, like on that Josh Allen first down, whether he made it or not, and you could hear what New York was saying to the referee and what the referee was saying to New York, people would be like glued.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it now.
Right? But it's a mystery. It's a complete mystery. We have no idea what was said. We never will know what's said.
I want to know. I want to tap into that. That's a good idea. Maybe there should be a technology. Maybe we should find a way to tap into their headsets. I want to hear it.
But I mean, why not broadcast it? I mean, why do I have to listen to Romo, blah, blah, blah? I think he made it there, Jim. I don't know.
Yeah, it is annoying. I agree.
Let me hear what the refs are actually talking about. Why is it a secret? They're just talking about the rules, right? They're talking about the rules. That's what we've been told.
Yeah.
But are they talking about the rules?
No, I don't think so.
That's the question. Because if it's just the rules, why can't we hear it?
I wonder I don't think the coaches are in on it unless they're really good actors, because you can see coaches get really emotionally charged when a play doesn't go their way. Do you think the coaches, if you were to put your money on it, are they in on it, the head coach?
I think they could be, sure.
But they're good actors.
Go back to game tanking in the NBA. How does that happen? If Mark Cuban tells his team, your best interest to lose, does the coach then go out and try to win?
No.
Or is the coach, somebody directs somebody to do something in that scenario, which we know is true, 100% true. We know it happens. So there's a professional sports league that says games aren't fixed, and we know a GM or an owner is dictating on down to the coach and to the players, we don't care if you win this game. We'd prefer you lose. So at some point, I think definitely head coaches can be involved. Are they always involved? No, but I don't think you have to fix every game. I don't think every game is fixed. I don't think it's professional wrestling. I think at certain times, certain games are definitely tweaked, influenced. Some completely outright fixed to get certain outcomes. But at the same time, why do these losing head coaches and coordinators keep getting jobs?
Right.
You're proven to be a loser. Let's bring you back in. Let's do it again. We think you might do well this time.
Like Arthur Smith. Smith Falcons. His dad was the owner of the FedEx or something. He just, nepotism type thing, and they didn't know the people up top.
But that's the thing I think definitely coaches can be involved. And you see obviously emotion. You see people screw up. You see people get mad. But at the same time, you see them also make the stupidest decisions.
Yeah.
Like even non-fans or, non-supposedly students of the game are like, why are you doing that? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You're supposedly the brain trust, but yet you completely fouled it up. Maybe it was intentional.
But again, it's going back to how come people are coming out, like people that are retired and coming out and spilling the beans, right?
What do you have to gain? Right? So that's the thing. So if you're a former coach, you're a former player, you probably get jobs or whatever because you're a former player or coach. That's what your livelihood is based on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if Peyton Manning came out tomorrow, wrote a book and said, I fixed this Super Bowl, I made sure that the Saints won, the NFL rewarded me by giving me Super Bowl 50 so I could retire off, right off into the sunset after Super Bowl 50. Nobody would believe him.
No.
And he'd be like, look, I'm Peyton Manning. I'm telling you, this is what happened. I did this. They would say, well, Peyton, where's your proof?
I think they would. I think he'd have some.
No, they would say, where's your proof? You'd have Stephen A. Smith. Where's his proof? Where's his proof? I need to see his proof.
Yeah.
He can't prove it. He's got nothing written down. I'm supposed to take his word for it? That's what everybody would say. It would actually destroy their reputation. They wouldn't prove anything. And the people like me who would believe him might be few and far between versus the fans who just backlash. Right. And then there's his former teammates would come out and say, he's full of shit. We don't believe him.
Yeah.
What's he talking about? That's not the way to happen. No. I mean, everybody would come out against Peyton Manning or whoever it was. So there's very little to gain. And you say, well, you'd sell a ton of books. Let me tell you, I sell books. You don't make a lot of money selling books.
Yeah, I guess
there's not money to be made doing this.
I guess you're right, because Aaron Rodgers, everybody thought he was a nut house when he was not taking the jab when everybody else was, and everybody thought he's like kind of Looney Tunes and like he's a little bit out there when he was, he had his convictions. So yeah, maybe they'll just think that Peyton was the Looney Tune guy.
Well, I've yet to see somebody tell me explicitly if somebody was involved in fixing the game, how they would benefit by revealing it. Because again, what would their proof be? If Peyton Manning said, I fixed that Super Bowl, what would his proof be besides saying, well, I threw that interception? Did you do it on purpose?
You kind of be outcast, kind of like you're in the big boys club and Peyton's the one that ratted on everything that they're doing and kind of their whole scheme behind everything.
Yeah. Exactly. It affects everybody then. It's a trickle-down thing. You become the most hated fan in football.
Yeah.
You have very little to gain by coming out except maybe clearing your conscience. And I'm sure there are players, I'm pretty positive, there are players who fix games either for gamblers or for whatever that do reveal this stuff. It's like the guy who worked for the CIA and his deathbed tells his kid, oh, just by the way, I helped, overthrow this government. It's the same thing, I think, with former athletes, where they say, they tell somebody, be it a wife, brother, cousin, a close personal friend, like, man, I did some bad stuff. But it doesn't mean it comes out. It doesn't mean they put it in a book or it comes out in a magazine or, a tweet or whatever. But I know these things come out. It's just hard to find who the guy is to really put your finger on the pulse of to really find the truth.
We live in crazy times, man. Like, honestly, like even the moon landing, right? Like if you look at with the way they take off the moon to go back and it looks like this paper mache type foil type, and it's like, how did you get it there? Who's taking the video? The shadowing doesn't look good. And now we're diving down the rabbit hole. I personally don't believe we landed on the moon, because if you did, we'd be there, more frequently, more than once, right?
Do you think we know how to get back?
Yeah. And
we did it in 1969. We can't figure out now.
Like the communication, how are they talking? There was no cell phones. We have trouble. Like I was talking to my friend Tim. He lives out in the boonies. It's like he's having reception issues, and you're telling me 1969 you could properly communicate to the moon? But anyway,
it's only 235 million miles away, right?
It's crazy. So
it's right around the corner.
That's a whole other rabbit hole thing. But again, these people have come out. I think, what was his name? Aldrin or whatever, Buzz Aldrin. I think he kind of said it a couple of times, but people don't believe him. They still believe that this is the whole narrative. And it's like, I don't even know if this is ever going to come out, man. I don't know if they're ever going to completely come out and say, do you think the NFL is going to come out and say, yes, we're the WWE? I don't think they will.
No, unless they were absolutely forced for somehow. And I don't know how that happened. Because, one of the things I always point out is, a Jets fan sued the Patriots and the NFL over Spygate. And it went to the Third Circuit Court of Appeal, and the basic decision by the judges were, look, as a fan, you bought a ticket to see a game. All the NFL has to do is put on a football game. As long as they don't put on a boxing match or a basketball game or a hockey game, as long as they play some form of football, you have zero recourse. They don't have to follow the rules that they've set. Certain players don't have to play. One team could be cheating. The game could be fixed. It doesn't matter. If you bought a ticket to see an NFL game, they put on an NFL game. That's all that needs to be happen. So basically, the law has shown what I'm saying is right, that these leagues can fix their own games because you have no recourse as vain. You can't even sue them for fraud. So they're not committing fraud. They're just putting on a football game, which is why before every game and after every game, this is a presentation of the National Football League. It's a presentation. So what it is, they tell you that.
So there's no legal framework. No legal framework to prevent these manipulations. None. Zero.
None. No, the two closest laws, one is the game show law that came out in the 1950s when they fixed the game shows in the 50s because they would give the answers to the contestants. But it's exactly what I claim they're doing with football and basketball today. is they were giving certain contestants the answers because it would make the episodes more exciting. It make people tune in week after week. Well, that got busted. They passed the law, but the law says you can't fix an intellectual contest for television. So you could fix like Survivor because it's not intellectual. You could fix, America's Got Talent or American Idol. You could fix that, but you can't fix Jeopardy because it's an intellectual contest.
Skill test.
Same with football. It's not an intellectual contest, it's a physical contest. And the other law that was passed in 1963 was the Sports Bribery Act. The Sports Bribery Act was basically to stop gamblers from fixing college basketball games mainly. But that law is like literally 4 sentences, and it says you cannot bribe a player, a coach, or a referee to alter the outcome of a sporting event. Well, if you're the NFL and you dictate to your referees, hey, we want you to referee the game in this fashion so it benefits this team, you're not bribing anybody. It's just an employer telling its employees how to do their job. And that alters the outcome of games. So be it. Nobody got bribed. No foul. So there's no law that prevents this. Like I said, the closest thing is fraud. And even this Third Circuit Court of Appeal basically said, when you buy a ticket to a game, all they have to do is play football. They don't have to follow any rules or have any players play or any certain things have to happen. They fulfilled their promise. What do you think you get from watching it on TV? You have less than a ticket holder in terms of rights.
Right.
It's a television show.
This is crazy, man. What would your advice be to fans, to sports fans who might feel, disillusioned by the idea that games could be manipulated, or just in general? So people that are on the fence, or people that are completely convinced, or, what would you, people that are fed up, what would you say to fans at this point with in regards to rigging games and being a fan?
Well, I think it comes down to everybody needs an outlet. I mean, sports is entertainment. If you treat it as entertainment, great. Some people go to the movies, some people play music, some people paint, do ballet, whatever. If you want to watch football, you want to watch baseball, and enjoy it for the 3 hours it's on, great. My problem comes when fandom overtakes everything else. When people, all they think about is sports, they call in the sports radio shows, they spend all this money on, tickets and on hats and on t-shirts and all this other stuff, and fandom is their being. Do you really know what you're a fan of? Do you really know what you're supporting?
Right.
And if you come to realize that what you're supporting is a multi-billion-dollar business that's probably lying to you right in your face, then it may change your outlook on these things. And it may actually, I've had people tell me that it improves their lives. That once they kind of realized that this was kind of being faked and it wasn't exactly real, they went on to do other things. They paid attention to other things and actually improved their lives as opposed to being absorbed by this sports fandom, because it can change the way you think and how you do things.
It just kind of sucks, Brian, honestly.
I know. Well, people say I ruined sports for them, so I apologize.
No, I'm kind of jaded now. Like, Santa Claus was a real thing till I was like, I don't know, 8, and it was so much fun. And now I just know that the NFL is rigged, and because I really, really am good at watching games and observing stuff. I know that because I study fantasy, I analyze these players, and I just know that it's a game of inches. And the fact that these refs just interfere and just manipulate the game and screw plays, and I knew, actually, I predicted this game. If you look at my social, I said, it's going to definitely be the Eagles and definitely going to be the Bills. Bills have zero chance. I kept saying it. And people went back to my video and said, spot on, this age like fine wine. And I'm not psychic, man. I could tell, man, the narrative, the colors, the three-peat, such a great story. And, and I watched that game and I really focused on that Bills and Chiefs game. And I really, really I'm like, come on, man, like just let it not be true. And it's true, man. There's they had no chance. The Bills had zero chance to win that game.
No, and the referees, the way that a lot of NFL rules are written are like intentionally vague. So there's like gray areas and a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of things, like the interception you're talking about. They can say it's a catch because of A, B, and C. But they could have called it incomplete because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It's like, who do they want to favor? Which part of the rule did they want to enforce? And that's the way they're written. So the league can say, hey, our referees, they followed the rules because of A, B, and C was a catch. Well, what about X, Y, and Z where it's not a catch? Which is it? And that's the problem with it all. Is it a lot of it's subjective? What's the holding? What's pass interference? Those sort of things that can change a drive, that can alter outcomes of games. It may only take 1 or 2 calls. Sometimes it takes a lot more, but sometimes it only takes 1 or 2 calls, and they're subjective, and their rules are vague, and you can't question them. And that's the way it is. But that's exactly how you manipulate a game. That's how you can do it right in front of somebody's face, and nobody will do anything about it.
It is really crazy how subjective it is. And like, they still like, I watch these games and I'm marveled by like, they don't know what a catch is. Okay, did he have 2 feet down? Was he in? Did he have control of the ball? Oh, no, he bobbled it a little bit. Oh no, hit the ground. Like, it's like you guys are trying to figure out how to catch a ball in a game that the main point of the game is to catch a ball. I mean, football, that's one of the primary objectives of football is to catch a ball. And you're telling me you guys are analyzing and you don't know if he caught the ball or not. And like, it's just crazy, man. It's just crazy. The uncertainty around this.
And like I say, I think it's intentionally built in. I think I mean, I really do. I think that's why the rules are written the way they are. And so there is that vagueness, so you can cite certain things within that rule, which will benefit team A over team B when you need to.
Man, I'd love to get your feedback, guys. I want people to drop a comment below. But one last thing, what is the most shocking thing you divulged when you're doing your research here? You know, when you're doing your research, you wrote these books. What was something that you looked at and be like, man, that's pretty crazy. I can't believe that happened. I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said that. What was the one thing that kind of shocked you in regards to game rigging?
That's a good question. Actually, I really think the biggest thing was, like I say, when I tapped into the FBI files. And I got all the information from the FBI that nobody had ever, I don't even know if people knew existed. Because, I mean, there was over 400 some odd files that really only dated from the late 1960s into the early 80s, where the FBI was investigating players, leagues, everything. And I mean, it was everything. It was boxing, it was horse racing, it was basketball, it was football, it was Major League Baseball, it was college basketball, it was college football. It was all these sports, all these players. And they investigated a ton of stuff that I had never even heard of and nobody had really ever heard of. And yet, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people think the FBI is pretty shady these days, but back then it was probably a little more on the up and up. And I mean, the stuff in there was incredible. I mean, people were approaching players all the time to fix games. They had credible evidence that games were being fixed for gambling purposes. And, you know, they would even approach the leagues and the leagues would be like, well, we really don't care. Or the leagues would say, we'll just take care of it ourselves. FBI, go away. And they would. So, I mean, they were able to whitewash a lot of this stuff away. And really in the 1980s on, the FBI stopped investigating for fixed games. So nobody's even looking out for it. So we have no idea what's going on. So, I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing in that way. The other thing that blows me away, too, of course, is that it's legal to fix a game if the NFL wants to. I mean, that alone is just kind of crazy when you think about it.
I guess who's looking out for it now? Right here, baby.
Somebody needs to be. I mean, like I said, I'm getting a little tired of it. So yeah, take the mantle and run. Go get them.
Too much drama for me. To me, it's not even about the conspiracy. I just like to ask questions. If something doesn't make sense to me, I gotta ask. I just can't passively watch it and be like, yeah, you know, it was a lackluster performance by Josh Allen. You know, he could have done it, you know, but it was just a sad day. The sun didn't shine the right angle. That, you know, I just can't, you know, it's not rainbow for me.
Why did the Bills, they run 4 or 5 quarterback sneaks all to the left when even the announcer said before the first one, well, you know they run always to the left. It's like, really? Yeah. So Tony Romo and Jim Nantz knew that, but apparently Josh Allen and the Bills had no clue that they always run to the left. And yet they did it like 5 times in that game and it got stopped like every time they did it.
Yeah, I saw on social where Khalil Shakir was kind of lined up. You know, they had 5 yards to go. He's kind of lined up near the line of scrimmage. And then they had blitz showing, right? And this is a guy breaking down the footage, just a random social media guy. And then he called an audible, and then Shakir came behind Allen, like 5 yards behind Allen, and completely became irrelevant in this play. It's like, hold on, they're showing blitz. You want to have all hands on deck, or you want him to do something or run a quick slant to get the 5 yards and make it easy for Allen. But no, he goes and runs behind Josh. Like, who made that play call? You know, it's just like, again, you and I would make a better play call than that. So it just makes you wonder, man.
And like I say, and that's part of the thing where you say our coach is involved. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember reading, I think it was the Super Bowl the Packers lost to the Broncos.
Yeah.
And they had a chance. They actually had the ball. They were somewhat going downfield. And basically what wound up being the last call by the Packers, the play they called, one of the players in the huddle said, "What are we running?" And they said it again. He's like, "We never ran that play all year. I don't even know what that play is." So it's like when the game was online, when the game manager motion, they just pulled some random play that they hadn't practiced in since, you know, summer camp. And that's the play they ran to try to win the Super Bowl. And strange choices, really strange choices at really strange times.
Man, crazy times, crazy times. It's getting me a lot of views. It's been a lot of fun, getting me a lot of views, a lot of exposure, a lot of followers. Because I think people are just thirsting for the truth. And I think that's where your book comes in and all that stuff too, right?
Well, I think that, my sales always spike around Super Bowl because there's always some strangeness in the NFL that makes people go, wait a second, something's wrong. That and the NBA Finals, a lot of times it tends to spike too. But I think you're right. I think the fans, again, I think if you watch enough football, whether you're not a real football knowledge person, I think you see enough strange stuff that seems to favor one team over another where you just start having questions. And as long as your memory span lasts more than week to week, the more you see, the more you question about it. And I think you have the right to question. I think you have the right to be a skeptic when it comes to these leagues because, again, they're in the business to make money, and they're making billions of dollars off of this stuff. And what other company leaves their business up to chance? Exxon leave it up to chance. Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, they just leave things up to chance, or do they actually strategize and figure out exactly the best way to profit as they can? And nobody thinks the NFL does that or the NBA does that. Why?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. And again, what was the last thing? So you guys can get the book below, but what was the motivation behind these books? What really sparked in your head? Like, I got to get into this. Did somebody piss you off? Did you lose a bet? I'm just curious to the thought process. Why'd you do this?
Well, it kind of like I fell into it because somebody had to, I felt. I mean, I think there was two main books that influenced me. They're older books. One's called Interference by Dan Moldea, and he wrote about organized crime's influence in the NFL. And there's another book called They Call It a Game by Bernie Parrish, who used to play for the Browns. In fact, he's one of the few ex-players who played in the late 50s, early 60s, and he was part of the NFL Players Association for a very long time. He wrote a book where he basically said he thought Super Bowl III was fixed to facilitate the merger between the AFL and the NFL. I mean, that's a former player basically saying, when like CBS bought into the league, I felt like CBS bought the league. I mean, that's strong stuff from a former player, a guy who was still, like I say, involved in the Players Association. But, people forget because it was dated. It was the 1960s, and he wrote this in the early 70s. But those two books kind of influenced me. After reading those, that kind of set me on the path that I've gone on. Okay, and again, it filled a void because nobody else was doing this. Nobody else will talk about this stuff.
Well, let's do a third edition. I'm interested. If you're interested, let's do a third edition. CC, like put me as a co-author, and I'll push the heck out of it. And we'll make, we'll crush
millions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hopefully.
I think we should do a third edition. I think we're overdue because there's so much new stuff going on. And I think we should talk about the new fans, how these fans are just like really starting to catch on. So I think we need to do an updated version. And again, we didn't talk about this off the air. If you're interested, we could talk about it after, but I'd love to do a book with, you could do the main book and I'll just kind of be in you do all the work.
Oh, sure. I'll do all the heavy lifting. I see how it goes.
You're the knowledge guy.
Well, it's funny because the book that I wrote, The Fix Is In, came out in 2010. I wrote the sequel came out in 2019. And it was like amazing how much stuff happened in 10 years. It was like, holy crap. I didn't think I could do another book.
You've got good data in there. That's the foundation. We should just do another one. So you guys got to get these two books, get up to date, and we're going to work on a third one.
Yeah, get a third one going, yeah.
If you're in, man, I'm making the offer right here, right now. You can't say no. Let's do it.
Well, except I got to do the work. No,
I'll dive in. I'll help because I'm on the streak. Like I said, millions of views, man. And so many people are going to watch this video, and they want a third edition. So if you guys listen this far, you're obviously passionate. You're going to get the book. Do you want a third edition? Drop a comment below. I should have asked them at the beginning of the show. Most people tune in at the beginning, but it's been so interesting. I'm assuming a lot of people made it to the end. So that's
they better have, yeah. We just irritated them so much they quit. So it's one or the other.
I think it was a very interesting conversation. I think you answered everything that needs to be answered. So in a nutshell, yes or no, is the fix in with absolute certainty? You have zero doubt, yes or no, Brian?
Oh, yes.
100%. 100%. I'm in 100%. Let us know what you guys think below. Always great having you on the show. Hopefully we can get that third book on the go. I'd love to work on that with you. Brian Tuohy, the great and powerful, the man of the hour. Everybody wants to hear what you're saying because everybody's talking about what you wrote about. We're going about over an hour and 4 minutes. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show, man. And man, you are somebody that's definitely going to be sought out at this point. And it just gets hotter and hotter around this topic.
I know, it's bizarre. Like I say, every time around this year, this is what happens.
Yeah,
people see enough weirdness where they go, "What the hell?"
Yeah, so it's just not a lot of people are talking about it. So, thanks, guys. Thanks. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you guys think. And Brian, thanks again for coming on the show. Great show, man. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. We're out.